Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. Sorry, should have pointed that at my mouth. Very warm welcome if this is your first session with us today. So my name is James, and I'll be the host for this session, which is led by Emma Bracegirdle, the founder of the Saltways. Emma will be talking to us about how charities can thrive in the age of AI. So before I hand over to Emma, I just want to share our house rules and pointers for today's session. So there'll be time at the end for questions. So if you use the Q&A bar that's along the bottom of the Zoom and add them there, we will run through those. If there's anything that you particularly like, feel free to upvote those, and then that will get answered first. And slides and other resources will be made available after the event. Without further ado, I will pass over to Emma.
Thanks, James. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to do the awkward thing where I start sharing my screen. So just bear with me 1 second.
You are good to go.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yep. All good.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Right. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me today. As James said, my name's Emma Bracegirdle. I'm the founder of the Saltways. We're a video production company that specialises in ethical filmmaking for charities and nonprofits. And we also run free training and in September, our first ever charity film festival, which is very exciting. Before we get started, as James said, if you've got any questions during the session, please put them in the Q&A. I'll try and leave as much time as possible at the end for questions, and also happy to pick this conversation up outside of this if we don't have time to cover everything. But yeah, before we get started, I just wanted to share a really quick video about who we are at the Saltways and why we do what we do.
People got this place built.
That has had an incomparable impact on my life, and it's made me who I am today.
I can't put into words what they've done for me.
Even the littlest thing gives you that independence back, and that's what people want.
I want to help the next generation, so leaving a gift in my will can do that.
I'm going to be changing the way that people are seen in society.
How are you?
Yeah. Speaking to someone's hard, but once you start, you'll get everything off your chest and you'll feel free again.
This was the one thing that really helped me cope with life and start seeing a brighter future.
What ended up being an amazing gift for us all is it gave us this determination to get out and make lots of memories together.
Yeah, it changed my life really.
So yeah, it's our mission that we believe all nonprofits should be able to create ethical and effective video content, and we also really believe in sharing our knowledge with the sector and listening to where help's needed. The picture on the bottom right is actually my first video that I made when I was working in a charity on my phone. So I'm all about authenticity, which is why today I'm going to talk to you about embracing authenticity in the age of AI. And everything I talk to you about is obviously from personal experience, but also it's grounded in some research. So some of it is our own work. So we did a survey of 116 charity professionals and 11 in-depth interviews were carried out specifically looking at AI generated imagery in the sector, which is what I'm going to kind of be focusing mainly on in this session, but I am going to touch on other aspects of AI as well. And some of it comes from a brand new report that YouGov and Meltwater have published, which is really interesting. It surveyed almost 10,000 consumers across 7 countries about how they feel about generative AI and the brands that use it. This isn't a session about me telling you not to use AI at all. It's just about me sort of telling you, hopefully helping understand where it could cost you the one thing that your charity can't afford to lose, which is trust. I don't want that to sound too scary, but I am going to talk you through it. So let's start with kind of the tension that sits underneath everything, really. So AI has kind of gone from being something of a bit of a novelty being just completely normal in the space of a couple of years. One thing I say it a lot, but it always blows me away. I remember working in a charity when the GDPR changes all came in, and it was like everyone went into full lockdown. It was training sessions galore, people getting certificates for practice, for GDPR best practice. And it feels like with AI that hasn't happened. It's just kind of here. It's already embedded in a lot of the tools that we use. It's in Canva, it's in Adobe, it's in Copilot. And yes, it is making content faster and cheaper to produce than it ever has been. But if you look at what's actually happening to public sentiment, I mean, I know when my mom's around, she's constantly showing me stuff going, I think that's AI, I think that's AI. And I'm doing it myself as well all the time. But YouGov's data shows that only 39% of people say they're excited about the future of generative AI. And that number's kind of heading in the wrong direction because Meltwater is tracking the positive sentiment towards AI, and that's dropped from 22% in the middle of last year to just 17% by February this year. So there is a real tension there. People are getting, at the same time, people are getting more confident they can spot AI when they see it. So 58% now say they can confidently identify AI generated content. So just think what that means for us as a sector. Content creation is getting faster and cheaper, but the audience on the other end is becoming more skeptical and more sharp-eyed about it, not less. And that's kind of the tension that I want you to sort of bear in mind here. These images on the bottom right there are of AI generated imagery that charities have actually used and have been found to use, which is terrifying. And then the headline numbers from our own research, because I think that as well they give everything a bit of context and help what I'm going to talk about after. So inside the charity sector, our research found that 16.4% of charities are already using AI generated imagery in their communications, and of those 56% don't label them consistently as AI generated. And then 94% of the charity professionals who spoke to were either unaware or unclear about legal disclosure requirements. So again, there's a lot of conflicting messaging there in between, like who's using it, how they're using it. But then if you now compare that to the public side of things, so, and I know I'm just throwing loads of statistics at you, we will get these slides, but I just want to give it all a bit of context. 32% of people say they'd trust a brand less if they knew that content had been made using AI, compared to only 15% who say it would make them trust the brand more. So there's a big gap there. 86% say that it's important that brands disclose when they've used AI, and 73% are worried that AI generated content could be used to create fake news or scams. So if you put those kind of two halves of the pictures together, you get something quite stark. So charities are already using technology, mostly without labeling it, and mostly without understanding what they're legally required to do. And exactly at the same time, the public is telling us quite loudly and consistently that undisclosed AI content damages trust rather than building it, which, like I've said, is gold dust in the sector. But I just want to kind of stay in the sector because I'm not, pointing fingers or saying what anyone is doing is wrong-ish. I understand that there are massive pressures that push charities towards using AI, and a lot of you probably experience these. So in our interviews, people told us they were using it to protect the dignity of beneficiaries, so they didn't have to show the real faces of someone in a difficult situation. They told us it was faster, it's cheaper. Sometimes there just wasn't suitable existing imagery for what they needed, or nobody could travel and photograph it. One person described it this way, and I think this was kind of a perfect explanation, that you have to publish images and videos optimized for every platform, constantly feeding the beast. And I think that's the reality a lot of comms teams are living in. So the pressure is real. What worries me is the kind of awareness gap that sits behind it. So if 56% are saying they're not labeling their content as AI generated consistently, and 94% are clear about what the legal stuff around it is, then there's already kind of a misleading and representation of beneficiaries. And there could be an argument that that's also being applied to AI generated imagery as well. However, there was one number that was actually really encouraging from our research, that 18 organisations had told us they'd tried AI generated imagery and then stopped using it. So that does tell me something important, that I think when charities test this against their own values properly, a meaningful number of them do decide it isn't worth it. So it's worth bearing that in mind as well, about, you know, it's a story about a sector that hasn't probably had the conversation properly yet, which is one of the things that I think hopefully this session will open up and help you to do that. Because what happens when that conversation doesn't happen in time could be disastrous. So this whole issue really entered the sector's consciousness when when The Guardian revealed that major NGOs were using AI-generated imagery of poverty, of children of survivors of violence in their fundraising and their social media without labelling it at all. And supporters had no idea what they were actually looking at. So the risk doesn't stop in your own choices, really. And December last year, AI was found generating logos onto poverty imagery with no charity involved in the process at all. So the image on the bottom there was just that logo of Peace Corps was added when prompts were used. And this kind of imagery is very much white saviorism, without the charity ever actually given permission for that logo to be used. It was just done with AI. So your brand and reputation could be at risk, even if you personally never touch an AI tool. So bringing that back as well then to the consumer data. So 32% say AI generated content makes them trust a brand less, against 15% who say the opposite. And then 63% say their trust drops specifically when AI use feels misleading. And I think this is the really important one, that 45% say their trust would decline if AI was used on sensitive topics of things like health or personal stories of hardship. And that's exactly the territory that most charity storytelling lives in. So this is basically a sector that is running on almost entirely on public goodwill. And there isn't a change of product here changing hands, that it's a promise. And that is precisely why getting this wrong costs so much more for us as a sector than a commercial brand. But then the other side of this, which is something that I'm obviously passionate about, and why I think there's such a massive opportunity here for charities, is authenticity. Authentic is a bit of a buzzword, and it's something that I think is put on a lot of charity comms decks without really stopping to define what it means for you as an organisation or what it means to the sector. So for me and for us at the Saltways, authenticity is all about being raw and honest, in the sense that we don't over polish someone's story or stop it from sounding like someone. It's being transparent about how content's made, and it's collaborative. So meaning that the person whose story is being told has a real say in how it's being told. And it's worth saying as well what authenticity isn't. So people often mix this up. It's not lo-fi footage, like a shaky phone isn't automatically more authentic than a beautifully shot one. It's not putting people at risk in the name of realism, and it's not using someone's story to serve your campaign rather than serving them. So for me, it's about being open, honest, and showing the good, the bad, and the struggles that happen inside a charity and inside the sector. And in my experience, the charities that struggle with authentic content aren't really struggling because of a technical problem. It's more of an institutional one. So I think authentic storytelling really requires you to trust your contributors enough to let them lead. It requires you to trust your audience enough to show them complexity. I think from having worked with a lot of charities on video content, sometimes there's a tendency to have to over-explain things all the time and not to let the audience just understand the nuances that in someone's story or experiences. And it requires you to trust yourself enough to be transparent what you don't know yet, and that the magic can happen when we let go of control. And it is happening in a lot of organisations. And I just want to really quickly show you a video of a charity that really fully embraced this. And It's a charity called Pact, and this as well is a really good example of how you can use, you can still be authentic to someone's story without even showing their identity. So I'm just going
Before anyone really found out, we were just...
Punishment, isn't it? It's the lifelong punishment. My 5 children were aged between 9 and 16 when I went to prison.
I was 5 and my sister was 16 when my mum went to prison. My mum got taken away and police were around. I was kind of just under this impression that she would be coming back eventually. She didn't. It was just my sister basically taking care of me for a long time.
I think it's a really hard weight to carry when it really dawns on you that the choices that you've made in your adult life have had the consequences that they've had on your family. It's so painful. I did everything that I could have done. Send letters, phone, send people round to the house to make sure they're okay if I identified something that wasn't okay. But essentially, as my daughter said, Mum, to all intents and purposes for that 4 years, you were dead.
It was a couple months before anyone really found out. We were just living by ourselves. It only ever became apparent because my sister was just late to school all the time because she was picking me up and taking me to school. I was pulled out of my classroom, my sister was there, and they basically told me, "You're not going to be going home tonight." And I was like, "But why? Like, my mum's coming back eventually." Like, "No, she's not coming back for a while." And I was like, "But why isn't she?" And they were like, "Well, she's in prison." Pack a bag of everything that you think you might need, and that's about it.
It's a long journey back. I've been home from prison for 17 years. How I've responded to the situation is to dedicate my life after that to supporting families of people who are in prison. That's why I'm a trustee of Pact. The support that an organisation like Pact can bring to keeping families together in the first place, supporting children, and the long-term support that families need to recover. I think Pact's the charity that I wish my children had had.
Yeah, I didn't know when I was going to see my mum again, if I was going to. There was just so much I didn't know. We want to protect younger kids and only tell them what's necessary, and I agree. But I think that did a lot more damage to me, being so left in the dark. If I had something like Pact when I was growing up, I would have felt a lot less isolated to know that there's other people like me, and that there's a lot of people like me, you know.
With lots of love, lots of consistency on my part, lots of giving space for my kids to air their feelings, I think we've survived it. Some of the adversity that my children have been through has also been part of what makes them kinder, more intuitive and more compassionate individuals, of whom I'm really proud.
If I could go back to the young me, I think whenever I was particularly down, I would probably say, you know, one day, eventually you'll be in a good enough place that you could help people like you. Yeah, and I think that would make me feel a lot better.
So I wanted to show that, just to show, an example of the beauty of embracing authenticity, because I want to reframe this a little bit, because I don't want charities to be approaching this from a place of fear. I think commercial brands are kind of chasing efficiency and scale, and that's perfectly sensible thing for them to do. But charities have always had to run on trust, because it's a massive currency that persuades someone to give money to a cause where there's, like I said, there's no product actually coming back to them. And that's precisely what this research is telling us the public is craving right now. It's not more polished content, it's more trustworthy content. So authenticity isn't the thing getting in the way of efficient content production. I think it's the one differentiator that no AI tool can manufacture for you, because it depends on a real relationship with a real person. And I think that if charities were more transparent and open about how they run, why they make the decisions they do, why they can't show service users' faces, or what they pay their team and why, then we could actually build even more trust in the sector. we can be the sector that when people are scrolling on social media and questioning whether something has been AI generated, that they know that if it came from a charity, it either wouldn't be, or it would be labelled as to why. And it really is only going to take, one front page of a newspaper about a charity being found to use an AI to destroy the trust that's already so delicate in the sector. And there's just one other thing as well that's more of a long-term thing, just to bear in mind that whatever your charity publishes may now end up training the next generation of AI models. So the standards that you set kind of outlives this year's campaign in some way. We do have the research that we've done, which I've mentioned already, that I do know that some charities will be using it. There's reasons why they will do that. We conducted the research into this, but we have published guidelines on if you are going to be using AI to generate imagery, like, how can you do that in the most responsible way. So I know we'll be sharing this as a resource after, but there's things like how you can use the prompts that you can use, things like, not using stereotypical laden language like poor African child needing help, and thinking about disclosure, about how you disclose to your audience if you are using AI, and then just before anything goes out the door, just run it through, a short gut check basically of how would our beneficiaries feel seeing this. Are we using AI here to avoid proper consent conversations? Have we labeled it clearly? Are we doing something that actually illustration or photography might have been able to do instead? There's things in there like higher concern uses, lower concern uses. So yeah, you'll get that as a resource, but I just want to, give this with a caveat that if you are using AI for whatever reason to generate imagery, there are ways to do it safer than others. And then I just wanted to talk a bit about, I think there's something that's happening in a lot of charity comms teams now, and this might not be the boardroom as such, it might be more, the conversations that are happening within your teams. And I understand that a lot of people are really excited about the efficiency that AI offers, particularly when budgets are tight. There's obviously a lot of shadow AI happening in teams, so it is something that people are excited about. They're using it, but then the people that are actually producing the content are often the same people who've built years of trust with beneficiaries, are sensing that there's something important being eroded when AI creeps into the storytelling. So I think neither of them are wrong really, and I think that the efficiency gains are real, but the practitioners aren't wrong either. So I think, and data backs it up. So if you remember that 32% trust figure, and then that dropping even more the closer AI gets a sensitive personal subject matter. So I think what you could use as a tool is to kind of split what your team does into two categories. So there's efficient tasks and then trust tasks. So efficient tasks are one with no real person's dignity, likeness, or story attached to them. And I think that's where AI can be encouraged. So that might be, admin, it might be finance stuff. Trust tasks are the one that touch a person's story, so their image, their lived experience, and where human ethical consent-led process has to stay really firmly in place. So that's like a way to think about it in terms of framing it for how you actually do this. And from a practical point of view, so like I said, let AI take on your efficient tasks, scheduling, transcription, first drafts of internal reports, data, report work, research summaries, translation drafts. All that's kind of fair game, and you should feel more comfortable using AI in those settings. The caveat here is that just to make sure that any platforms that you're using have all the privacy settings on, so it's not, the data's not being shared, it's not being used to train AI in the future. And if you're using paid for versions, you can switch that on for most platforms. You also need to be clear with your supporters that you are using AI within your organisation and the ways that you're using it. So some charities have something on their website, some have a policy that they link to, and do some comms around that. And this matters because it frees up your limited human hours for your trust tasks, which is the creative, ethical, relationship-based way of actually telling someone's story and getting proper informed consent to do it. So I think framed this way, AI adoption isn't in tension with authenticity. It what protects the time and the headspace that authenticity actually needs, and it gives your team and you a concrete sort of yes or no to decisions. And I think it's it's a rule to hold on to, that the further the task sits from a real person's story, dignity or likeness, the more comfortable you can be leaning on AI. And the closer it gets to that, the more it needs to be human involved, and probably more than one human. And that's where, you know, you can really lean into and fully embrace authenticity to be kind of your superpower as an organization, and to make your supporters trust and fall in love with you even more than they already are. And I think I've done that right perfectly to the second.
Absolutely bang on time. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Emma. That was great, and it's also prompted quite a lot of interesting chat. I think your last slide kind of summed up kind of the scale between what people are talking about in the chat. So we've got someone from a hospice charity whose nurses don't want to be recognized and can't use patients and families, and then a domestic abuse charity who's is challenging for them because they don't want to use the survivors. We've had recommendations of a platform called Unsplash, and then also Center of Aging Better. But I guess your last slide did sum it up. But for these charities where it's really difficult for them, what is your recommendation to use your guide, use the AI, and really be clear about it? Do you have any other platforms that would be good for them? Or just like, yeah, I guess there's no correct answer, but what do you think these charities should do?
I think there's a few different ways I can answer this. So firstly, like we've worked with loads of charities creating content on their phones, protecting people's identity by doing things like filming feet. We recently produced a video with a domestic abuse charity, which was filmed on a phone, and it was just filming like landscapes with a voiceover over the top. That was not even, someone had written their story, and then a staff member had done a voiceover, and then it got it. So there are ways around not using people's identity, firstly. Secondly, I think going back to that whole thing about being more open and honest and transparent, I think when I worked in a charity where we couldn't use people's faces' identity, it was a refugee charity, we actually did a whole campaign around why you won't ever see our clients' faces. And the supporters actually responded really, really well to that, and just said, like, thank you for telling us why. And we totally understand why, because you need to protect them, because they want to protect them. I know you need to talk about impact, but you can do that in other ways of staff speaking, of, you know, like people telling their stories, but changing names and stuff around it, and maybe using things like graphics on screen instead. So there's that side of it. And then if you are using AI generated imagery, the prompts, if you get the guidelines, it does break it down, but you need to almost do it like take an image that you already have, or an image that you like, put that into AI, ask AI to do the prompts to describe it for you, make sure there's no stereotype in there or anything that's harmful, and then use that again as the prompt, just making sure it's very descriptive. It's accurate, and if you can, do it alongside the person who you're actually generating the AI image of. So if it's a staff member, or make sure they get some input as well, so it feels a bit collaborative. And then you just really need to clearly label this is AI generated, and maybe explain why. Some people advocate for showing prompts as well. That's a whole other conversation. But if you wanted to do that, that's where you would also share your prompt. And there are more and more organizations that are kind of building free resources of non-stereotypical images as well, which is great to see. So I just answered that question about 12 different ways. Sorry.
But I think I asked you it in about 12 different ways. So yeah, that worked really well. Thank you. We've had quite a few questions from people working with children or people who are in primary schools. So I'll just ask the top voted one. So we are starting to find that more and more parents do not want their kids photographed at events due to the rise of AI being used to sexualize children. We are trying to show our kids events and enjoyment and impact kids' enjoyment and the impact it's having, but we're starting to struggle to work out what to do. Do you have any advice? I guess maybe the last question kind of answers it, but yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's who your audience is, because if your audience is the parents themselves, then you don't really need to be showing that. Like, I would, again, just use, if you're taking images, you can get some really nice little videos of just people's feet or hands clapping, or Something I've done is if you're sort of stood outside a room and there's an event happening, you can hear all the noises. You can just be saying, I'm really excited to be at this event today. The kids are all in there, absolutely having a great time. So you can hear it happening, but you don't actually need to see it. Again, I think it's just, this is a concern that parents have, so you have to respect that. And it's totally accurate as well. It is happening. So I'd ask yourself, like, who's your audience and why do you need to show them these images? Because I think probably if it's sort of most parents saying we don't want that to happen, then they're not going to be engaging with that content anyway.
That's really, really good advice. We have had a few more questions, but I think we are going to have to call time there. One thing that Hannah has flagged, and I think it must be a good thing because it must be that you're getting a good amount of traffic, but the website's down at the moment, so I'll let you go have a look at that.
It's been down. It's a battle and a war at the moment with that's going on, but our website is down and it's sad, but hopefully we're back at this afternoon.
Oh, fine. Okay. So maybe if you could post your socials, and then if anyone is interested, please do visit the Saltways website this afternoon. But thank you very much. I'm sure the conversation will continue before the next session. But thank you for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah.